Let's talk to Maria McCarthy now, those motoring journalists, because the Labour government, once again, amongst many of the things that they claim to be, is a friend of the motorist. They basically said, oh, we're going to try and make it easier for people to drive their cars, despite the fact that they're putting up their prices every single time you turn around, despite the fact that they're putting tolls on things that didn't used to have tolls on them, and the fact that they're charging people more and more money to get parking fines, to get speeding fines and all the rest of it. Maria, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good to see you. It's hard to imagine that this government would try and convince anyone that they're the friend of the motorist, but yet here they are trying to do it.
Yeah, I think that the thing about motoring is, I think as anybody who's ever driven in a congested area is aware, it is actually a good idea not to have that many cars in a really busy city centre. But what you've got to do, I think, is one of the things the Minister said was you can sort of she quoted somebody who said that an advanced city is not one where the poor have to own a car, but one where the rich choose to use public transport. And I think what we're seeing at the moment is an awful lot of sticks used against the motorists. Now, of course, some people absolutely need to use their car. They've got tricky, difficult journeys to make. They've got tools in their vans and so forth. But lots of us, myself, for example, when I'm in London, I'm perfectly happy to use public transport. But what you've got to do is you've got to make it better. You've got to make it cheaper. You've got to make it safer. And you've got to make it more frequent, particularly in rural areas. I mean, the people I really feel for are, I live in a rural area myself, or on the edge of one, are people who they absolutely need their car. It's not a choice. They need to get it to work, they need to get it to their children to school, they need to get it to visit family members, and they are the people, I think, who are being really, really squeezed, and those are the people I think that we ought to look at how we can support them.
Yeah, but an awful lot of what I'm talking about is the amount of money it now costs to be a motorist, and whether you are a tradesman and you're driving because you need to drive for a living, or whether you're a taxi driver, or whether you're a car hire driver who works for one of the other companies, everybody's being squeezed. The car prices and the taxes on cars are going up. The luxury tax has been introduced for a car that's worth more than £40,000. They put a toll on a tunnel in London, which hasn't had a toll on it for decades, the Blackwall Tunnel, and that's going to cost people £4 every time they go through it. I was talking to the guy that drove me into work today. I have to come in a car because there's no public transport that time of the morning that's reliable enough to get me into work. So, and you'd be surprised at how many people are out and about at 5 o'clock in the morning. The fact is that it's all very well for them to say that they're the friend of the motorist, but they blatantly are not.
I do agree about all the taxes. It's becoming absolute. If you're an average person with average bills, for your home and everyday costs, and then you look at your motoring bills, so many people just can't do it, particularly young people. And I think that's really, really difficult about the cost of learning to drive, which is the area I'm very focused on, the insurance for young people. And so many young people work in things like, say, the catering industry, where it's not a choice. You have to get home from working in the restaurant at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, right.
Of course you need a car. So, so I think things like that. So I don't worry too much about the luxury car people. If you're going out buying a brand new sort of Audi, then, I've never done it.
So now an enemy of the people if you buy an Audi, is that what it is? I mean, these are people who are paying a lot of taxes already.
That was just a random brand name.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that, these are the people that pay most taxes in this country, and you've got a succession of mayors and a succession of MPs who want to basically make it more and more difficult for them to buy cars and to pay tax. And so the less tax they pay, the less tax the government gets in, and the less they can give to people to spend on public transport. So they're kind of disappearing up their own backside, if you don't mind me saying so.
No, I don't mind you saying it at all. I'm just sort of saying that I suppose the area of motoring I focus on personally is everyday motoring and everyday people motoring. So I don't actually spend a lot of time thinking about, the point you've made actually about the high-end cars. I tend to sort of think, if you're buying a high-end car, you've probably got a lot of money in the bank. But I see what you mean.
Yeah, but there's a reason why people who are buying high-end cars are keeping the markets afloat. They're paying more tax. The more VAT you pay on the higher cost cars. So I mean, if the government starts to discourage people from buying high-end cars, then they won't be collecting as much VAT. That's kind of my point. They're actually, they're actually harming their own tax raising abilities.
Yeah, no, I do take that point. Yeah, it's a good point.
It is. All my points are good. That's why I have a show like this. But tell me, I mean, what is also the problem, I think, for an awful lot of people, as you say, is rural driving, and those people are affected just as much. I mean, I haven't spoken to anyone, I don't think, this year whose road tax has not gone up, you know, because they see road tax as a way of it's kind of a stealth tax, as people don't really notice it. But you know, it's gonna in the end, it's gonna impinge upon the economic value, because if you haven't got a car, you can't get a job, you can't go anywhere. You know, it's difficult.
It is really, really difficult. And I mean, I was always sense of the topic of public transport, but I think, you know, at least I think that would be something you could do. At least you could offer the carrot of good public transport as opposed to always offering the stick. Because I think that would help in terms of, you know, reducing congestion, for example. I mean, you come into work at 5 o'clock in the morning, so presumably congestion is not that bad. But, you know, lots of journeys that you make in city centres, they are just painful. And you sort of think, if only some of these people could, like, you know, the able-bodied, the students, like the youngsters, were on the bus, I could get from A to B a lot quicker.
But there are loads of buses in London, and they drive around empty a lot of the time. You know, because again, you have people who are travelling mostly at certain times of the day. And you maybe need those buses between the hours of, say, 7 and 9:30, but you don't need them then to be driving around for the rest of the day. And they haven't seemed to have worked that out yet.
I think that London buses, I think, are horrendous because you can't get off them. I mean, but I'm young enough to remember, and so perhaps when actually you could run along and jump on a bus, and then when it was your point, you could just jump off it.
Right.
I was young and nimble in those days, whereas now, if you're on a bus, you're just trapped on it. Like, and sometimes it takes ages to go from one stop to the other, and so you feel like you want to beat against the doors.
Oh, I know. It's very frustrating. But you know, of course, if they hadn't put any cycle lanes in, we'd all have a lot more room to actually drive on. But that's another story. Maria, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Maria McCarthy, motoring journalist. I think she agrees with me that the government is not very car friendly. They're not very motorist friendly because in the end of the day, they're charging us more and more money to do something that used to be a lot less expensive. It's that simple.